Football Show on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Molloy and Nathan Murphy with you for the Football Show. We'll also be joined by the brilliant Vickery later on to talk about Sergio Aguero. The underappreciated Sergio Aguero, Nathan, is how I've been pitching this man. 3 goals against Aston Villa at the weekend. He's the most prolific overseas goal scorer in English football history. He's nudged himself past Thierry Henry. He's also gone past Alan Shearer with the most hat-tricks. He has 46 assists as well, which for a striker puts him top of the pile in the Premier League. Only twice he's managed to scrape onto the PFA Team of the Year. Never in the mix for a Football Writers Association Player of the Year. Certainly never in the mix for a PFA Player of the Year award. Besides Anfield, very healthy record against all the top teams. Very high percentage of goals when City win 1-0, important goals. And yet he's just, he's good. He's good. I like him. He's brilliant. But, he's no Thierry Henry.
He is no Thierry Henry. But he is the most important player in the Premier League of the last 10 years.
Well, hang on. Nobody would agree with that, would they?
That Sergio Aguero is the most important player of the Premier League the last 10 years. Well, he's played for the most successful team in the Premier League of the last decade, and he's been their most important player. To have a goal scorer like that who... I always felt at the start of every season, if Aguero plays 35 games, he's going to get you 30 goals. Now, injuries meant he rarely got quite to that, but he always scores
26 was his highest, which is still amazingly
goals
good.
A season. Of all the players I've seen over the last 6-7 years commentating, I'd say he scored more goals than anybody because, and in all manner of different ways. Like he does fall into that sort of poacher territory. Yeah. But think of a goal he scored against Chelsea last year, where 30 yards out onto his right foot, smashed straight in the top corner. He scored the most important goal of the last decade in the Premier League, if not of all time. But I was sort of going along and reading about Aguero and just loving watching him and his movement during a game, particularly in the last couple of years, how he's responded, because Guardiola wanted rid. Yes. Brought in Gabriel Jesus, somebody a bit more agile, who probably felt was a bit smarter now, could get around the pitch. Whereas you watch Aguero now, when it's going tough for City, he's dropping deep, he's going into his own half, he'll get himself involved, yet he'll still be there to finish off every move. He's the easiest player to commentate on, actually, because if a ball comes in, he just has such a familiar style of finish when a ball comes from inside the area, when he meets it at the near post. He can be at full tilt and still just get a lovely little flick of the ball to get it past the goalkeeper.
He's not a man who needs much backlift,
no,
to say the least.
And I was sort of having read all that over the last few days going, you know what, maybe he is better than Henry. But then I was at home this morning and there was a Thierry Henry Sky Sports century of goals. Oh my God. Yeah. Henry is just at a different level.
He could do more. And there is flamboyance counts for something, and general all-round technical ability counts for something. And the type of goals Henry could score ranged from, not as much clearly of a fox in the box as Aguero, but he could score in the box, no problem. But equally, the one against Spurs at Highbury where he runs from his own half and just scorches everything left behind him.
Similar goal against Liverpool.
Yeah, Inter Milan away, scored an amazing goal as well. He could just do some miraculous things, and he does tend to pop up. This is actually a bit harsh in Aguero. I was going to say with some more memorably spectacular goals, like the one where he flicked it up and turned and hit it over Dennis Irwin's head. Dennis looking helplessly. Dennis, about the most accomplished defender this country's ever
expected everything
produced.
that was ever thrown at him except this.
Even him gaping as, oh my God, what have you done here? The whole stadium was still for a moment until they realised what Henry had done. Aguero doesn't have as many of those. And so for all those reasons, I would still put Henry ahead of him. Although interestingly, Pat Nevin earlier on said, look, Henry phenomenal and maybe in some ways better player, but Aguero's ahead of him now. Comes down to goals, it's that simple. I'm still leaning towards Henry.
It's not, and I think one of the reasons is there's been a lot of statistics actually about Liverpool this weekend and their dominance, and no team in the history of the top 5 leagues has ever had a better start to the season. Yet all the best starts to seasons have come in the last sort of 7-8 years.
I have it here.
Whereas I think Henry was playing at a time when it was probably a little bit tougher. Even though I think the standard in the Premier League has never been better, I do think that actually Manchester City racked up big scores on far more often than Arsenal ever did.
Yeah. It's Liverpool this year. City in 27-18 had 59 points as opposed to Liverpool 61. Chelsea 05-06 are third. And then, to be fair, you're going back to Spurs in 60-61 and Preston in 18-88-89. God.
But that's the Premier League. When you look around Europe in recent times, it's almost all in the last 7-8 years with what Paris Saint-Germain have done and things like that. But Henry, the other thing was, Henry was a show-off, like just a brilliant show-off. All these reverse passes and no-look passes, and like I'd say the amount of players who wanted to kick the living daylights out of him. There was 3 separate clips that they showed where he's just soloing the ball across field, and there's 4 or 5 solos. You don't do that.
You don't. They showed the goal where he's in the box. I think it might be against Charlton, and he's at an acute angle and just backheels the ball into the far corner. Aguero doesn't quite have that level of flamboyance in him.
No, he just...
I'm talking down Sergio Aguero here. He's brilliant.
No, he's not.
He's brilliant.
But Sergio Aguero is, I score goals.
Correct.
He's not overly thinking about how they look.
Yeah.
Whereas Henry always wanted to look beautiful.
And often did. Generally did. Well, he's going to catch, certainly he's going to catch Andrew Cole, who's 10 goals ahead of him. Cole's played 455 odd games to get to 187. Aguero's at like 255 odd games to get to 177. So, I mean, his ratio in that sense is incredible. I do want to move on. Spurs 0, Liverpool 1. Complete domination in the first half on Liverpool's part. I thought they looked tired, actually, in the second half. I was saying to Pat earlier on, considering they were only 1-0 up, I didn't see the first half in full. I watched the highlights, but I watched the second 45. And I joined the game where I thought, oh, it's only 1-0 at half-time, not fully appreciating the level of dominance I've since read about. And for a team that were just 1-0 up, they were playing like a team that were 4-0 up. They kept losing the ball, they were just giving Spurs chances. And it was the first time I looked at them, I was watching the game with someone, I just said, they just look a bit shattered.
Which would be strange, considering it's the first time in about 4 months they've actually had a break.
Sometimes when you get off the treadmill, it hits you. I'm not worried about them, by the way.
They've got an awful lot better at playing that type of game. So obviously, Mourinho set up against Liverpool, even with Manchester United, and frustrated the life out of them. And I was over there last week for the Sheffield United match, and Sheffield United sat right back, and Liverpool set a record for passes. Their centre-backs just kept it ticking over. And against Sheffield United, it was easy. Even though it was only 1-0 for a good chunk of the game, Sheffield United are never going to do that much damage. And it was almost as if they were treating Spurs the same way. And even though Spurs are struggling, like, they're still a team that if they get the ball back off you, they'll do far more with it than Sheffield United ever will. And I don't know, was it a bit of sloppiness that crept in? But, or maybe they played the exact same way as they played against Sheffield United, but it was just a better quality opposition that when they gave it away, that they looked like they would do more damage. And obviously Tottenham had a couple of great chances to equalise. But I still think that they've shown... We still think of Liverpool as this team who are built on that midfield, winning the ball back quickly, getting it forward quickly. Whereas actually now they're a team that can do that if they need to, but also against a team that will sit back and they need to have 75-80% possession. They're just so patient.
They're very comfortable at that now, yeah. I thought Wijnaldum was an exception to what I'm saying, actually. He was still unbelievably energetic. I did want to ask you about the first half, because certainly the way it's been pitched is as Spurs and Mourinho, this marriage of convenience, being laid out in all its horror, as in no pressing of Liverpool, we're just going to sit back, a lack of variety to their play, a lack of ambition to their play, the game passing Mourinho by, although that seems like a silly thing to say in many respects. I'm sure Mourinho still understands the game as much as ever, but in terms of the way he prefers to set his teams up, this was Spurs timid and dropping deep and waiting for some kind of mistake. And that all sort of tallied. It's an understandable tactic against this Liverpool team of all teams. So I don't know if you feel Mourinho's getting a raw deal in the analysis of this.
The weird part is that there's just no great energy around Tottenham. That you would have thought at least he would have instilled something. Whereas it's clear he's taken over a team that are so disjointed in terms of where players want to be. Like Christian Eriksen's applauding the supporters as he goes off, and a sort of, well, that's obviously the end of me. They're missing Harry Kane, who just generally sets the tempo. There is no other way that Tottenham side can set up against Liverpool now. To do anything else would have been madness. They'd be ripped apart, because like that defence was the best defence in the Premier League 3 years ago, but now they look like they're going to concede, and do concede in, over a year since they've kept a clean sheet at home at this stage, which is just incredible when it is pretty much the exact same players. But it's been this overall dip, and if Mourinho, they nicked a goal at the end, you're looking at it going, all right, we're past the Mourinho masterclass stage.
Yeah.
You know what?
It's a decent result.
They stuck in there.
On the basis of the second half, so I didn't watch it with the first half in my mind, they deserved a point out of that game.
I thought Liverpool had a lot of chances in the first half, but Tottenham had so many men back. They weren't simple chances, so it wasn't a comfortable. Certainly wasn't one of the more comfortable days Liverpool have had.
The net result is that when Mourinho took over, they were 11 points off the top four. They're now 9 points off the top four. So all the early gains have fallen away. What's upcoming now is Mourinho going to Daniel Levy saying, I need 7 new players, Daniel. We talked about this when I signed, remember?
Well, we're going to talk about some of the young Irish players in a minute, and Troy Parrott fits into that, where Mourinho's saying pre-match, I don't have another striker. I have Harry Kane. I don't have anybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody in Ireland is, what do you mean? What about the wonder kid? What about that wonder kid right in front of your eyes? But obviously, he's looking at this thinking, I've probably got 4 months to make an impression here.
I need a wonder man. I need a wonder man, Nathan. So that's going to get messy, guaranteed. Somebody says Schmeichel is the Premier League's most underrated player. The best player in his position, still the best goalkeeper the last couple of decades. Aguero's not even the best player in his position, says Dara. Aguero, great finisher. Delighted to see him pass Henry. Fair play to him for passing Shearer. Still a long way to go to match Dixie Dean's 37 hat-tricks. What? 37 hat-tricks for Everton before Sky invented football. Cheers, Colin Arklow. I didn't realise Dixie Dean had 37 hat-tricks.
Scores. Remember the types of scores they had back then.
37 hat-tricks?
And I'm not trying to do down Dixie Dean. But...
Well, hang on. Man City hockey teams 8-1. How many 9, 10 ones did they have last season? 37 hat-tricks. Yeah. 12 is the record.
Dixie Dean, good at football, it turned out.
Bloody hell. You mentioned cause for optimism. So you tweeted yesterday, I think you were 1 out, but the point still stands.
Well, I thought Barry Cotter would fall into this. So I was just looking at Irish players who are eligible for the under-21s. Some of them are regulars for Stephen Kenny's side, some of them are in or around it, but who are at teams in the Premier League and the Championship, who've seen some first-team action. Barry Cotter actually plays for Ipswich, who were relegated, much to my horror, earlier today. So I've just gone through them, maybe just run through where they are, because going back to Keith Andrews last week, and a lot of these players are in a difficult position in that they're at reasonably big clubs who are fighting for a lot, where they may not be trusted. So do you go out and loan, or do you just try and bide your time and wait your chance? And these are crucial moments for them. And they're all over the pitch. There's a lot of attacking players, which is obviously very promising. But like the goalkeepers, Caoimhin Kelleher is the obvious one, 21, Liverpool, played 3 games in the EFL Cup. It'll be interesting to see how his career goes, because he's brilliant with the ball at his feet. And all the sort of stories about him is that, he played outfield and it was quite late when he decided at Ringmahan Rangers to go in goals. But he does look like that modern goalkeeper that a top team would want, where he can flick the ball around, what Stephen Kenny would want with the 21s. There's probably few question marks about his shot-stopping ability. He's conceded a lot of goals for Liverpool, so maybe he's still learning. And Liverpool are always going to spend big. Like, Alisson's probably the best goalkeeper in the world right now, so do you stay there for 5 years getting no game time? It seems as though he's very much third choice. He's out every time you're at Anfield. He's there pre-match. He's out on the pitch beforehand, warming up. So he'll probably face a decision in the summer. Try go League One, Championship, like Kieran O'Hara's doing. Mark Travers.
It's hard to leave Liverpool. Sorry, go on. Mark Travers, he was in action over the
only
weekend.
Only 20. He's played a couple of times for the senior team, played those friendlies against Bulgaria, New Zealand. Man of the match last season against Tottenham in his debut. Obviously made the mistake yesterday. Weirdly, the best thing for Mark Travers might be if Bournemouth get relegated. That
bit of an
they don't go and they invest, that a lot of players leave and he gets in. Looking at the defenders, Conor Masterson and Mark Travers used to play together and they were like 15 at Lucan. Masterson, obviously, is an interesting story. And he was at Liverpool, was on the bench for Champions League quarter-final against Manchester City, gets released then last summer. Made his debut, went to Queen's Park Rangers, made his debut in the Cup game last week against Swansea. Someone sent me on a highlights clip. He's an unbelievable footballer in terms of his passing ability. Like, you can see why he was at Liverpool, and I think he was one of these guys when he was 15. It was John O'Shea-esque. Like, he had his absolute pick of clubs. Probably a bit like Caoimhin Kelleher in that now needs to learn to defend, because when you're at Liverpool at underage level, it's all about what you can do with the ball. But he might get lucky now. Queen's Park Rangers were 3-0 down at the weekend against Brentford, and he came on at half-time for his league debut. So a couple of bad results there. Maybe he gets his chance. But you definitely think he's the type of player Kenny would love to come through, because he's just, his range of passing. I keep going back to a 21s game where picks the ball up from the centre half, midfielders don't come deep, and he loses his mind at them. And they just start all over again. And this time it does, and the midfielder comes short, and they pace it up, and they end up creating a really good chance. So he's a proper footballer. Darragh O'Shea plays all the games with the 21s with him at centre back. Played with West Brom, also just the one league game. Played the FA Cup against Charlton, but he's already gone out on loan. He's been with Exeter last season, so he's played quite a bit of football in League Two. Looks maybe slightly ahead, and Slaven Bilic raves about him at West Brom, so it looks as though he'll probably stay. Masterson, Queen's Park Rangers said they might let go on loan for the rest of the season, depending on how things go. The other one that's interesting is Nathan Collins, who, like all summer, we thought might go to Manchester United for 4 or 5 million quid. He's still only 18. Played 3 games last season. Everyone thought he was brilliant. Captain Stoke. Hadn't really happened from this season. Hasn't started because Stoke have been a mess. Hasn't played in the league since back in August. Played the FA Cup a couple of weeks ago, but again, he's 18, and if you've been linked with Manchester United, it can't go that downhill that quickly. So it looks as though he's a very, very good future. The midfielders for here and now, possibly the most interesting. Jason Molumby of all of these is the one who, even though he hasn't played for the senior team, you feel might get a chance against Slovakia because of what's happening with Glenn Whelan.
Yeah.
So he's on loan at Millwall from Brighton. He's the captain of the 21s, Waterford native. He's still only 20. He's played 16 times for Millwall this season. Started the last 11 games. Everyone who goes to see him raves about him. When you watch him 21s, he's got a little bit of bite, a little bit of nastiness, always getting in the opposition's face, and a really tidy footballer as well, which may be exactly. Now, whether Mick McCarthy will risk away against Slovakia.
I suspect he will try and avoid that.
Jason Knight, what he's done the last few weeks is ridiculous. 18, scored at the weekend against Huddersfield for Derby, scored 2 against Charlton a couple of weeks ago, started the last 7 games. So he's playing every single week in the Championship at 18 years of age. Connor Coventry, if you've seen the 21s, he plays in the middle of midfield all the time.
Yeah.
Very tidy player. He just joined Lincoln on loan in League One from West Ham. He's played League Cup game for West Ham. He was brilliant against Italy in that scoreless draw. So he's dropped down a couple of levels again. Very highly rated, though, it seemed, at West Ham. They gave him a long-term contract last year, so
He said
he's going to be around.
His inspiration was Declan Rice.
Which was always the worry, but he's since gone on to say that, I'm not going. He's very much committed. Josh Barrett, probably a player, not a lot has been said about, 21, one of the English-born players, played a few times for Reading earlier in the season in the Championship. He's actually just left in the last week. He's gone to Bristol Rovers in League One, another central midfielder.
Yeah.
One probably for much further down the track, who has played first-team football, Yassine Enia. He was at Bowes. He's just 19. He's now at Nottingham Forest. Came on against Chelsea in the 3rd round of the FA Cup. Attacking midfielder, had a really bad knee injury and a really bad leg injury last year, so missed about a year of football. But again, he's very close to the Forest first team, it seems. And then a couple on the south coast. Gavin Kilkenny, former Kevin's player. He's at Bournemouth. Probably want to watch in the next few weeks. Just signed a new long-term deal. He's played a couple of League Cup games. Been on the bench quite a bit in the last month in the Premier League. How you look at that? So he's been on the bench but hasn't been able to get a game despite all their injuries and all their loss of form. Or maybe eventually his time will come. He was man of the match to play the game against Leon in pre-season, and Eddie Howe was raving about him and said, very much his time is now. But he's still only 19. He's played a couple of games for Stephen Kenny as well for the 21. So maybe he might get a bit of luck over the next few weeks.
It's a tough time to try and break into a team struggling, but still.
Yeah,
we'll see.
and one that probably came to people's attention for the FA Cup was Will Smallbone, 19, English-born, scored for Southampton in the FA Cup against Huddersfield. He's on the Irish under-19 squad, probably one of those who might push his way in for the 21s. So they're the midfielders, and the strikers are the ones, everyone's, 4 strikers have played in the Premier League.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? From over the last 2, 3, 4 years, if one more person said, we need another Robbie Keane, and I'm not saying we have another Robbie Keane, but that we have actual Premier League options is extraordinary. This many Premier League options.
So 4 teenagers, like Adam Ida, the most recent from Norwich.
The way he took his goals last week was just so promising. Like the one where the goalkeeper thumped it. There was the first one where he shows real pace and he gets in and he finishes well. That's really promising. Kind of an instinctive move and finish. And then the one where the goalkeeper pelts it out to him. His first touch is so good. Second touch calm. That was not an easy chance off his left foot. And it didn't even bounce into the net. It hit the net. Real conviction about it. Real composure about it. Just thought, you don't see many 18-year-olds with that level of assurance.
No.
Now, Pat Nevin said he played, obviously, at Old Trafford, and it was a complete nightmare. He was completely isolated from the team, as you would expect. But there's real promise there.
I watched the game on Saturday, and it's one of those you hope in 10 years he's laughing about.
Yeah,
best chasing shadows.
Yeah, it was the best
at
of
Old
luck
Trafford. They never got a touch of the ball. They were totally outclassed. And
How often has he played for Norwich then at this stage?
so he played a League Cup game at the start of the season and scored in that. And then he played the FA Cup game, got the hat-trick.
That was it.
And
well, they're going down.
well, that I was just going to say, that maybe that is, again, something you'd imagine Timo Pukki, if they go down,
He'll
will
be in
most
demand.
definitely get a move. And the one thing you need to remember, he's still only 18.
Yeah.
And even watching the 21s, like, he's been a bit hit and miss at times for the 21s. And I remember one of his coaches was saying, you know, he needs to be more Hulk than Bruce Banner. Like, that's what he has in him. Like, he has that strength, but he needs the confidence. And he needs to realise that he has that in him, that he can hold the ball up, that he can hold bigger men off. And when he does that, he's exceptional. And, like, that's sort of what he's had to do for the Irish side. Whereas, like, that first goal he scored against Preston, like, the finish was brilliant, but the timing of the run, you could see it coming. You could see him bending his run to perfection, which he hasn't really had a chance to show that a huge amount for Ireland. So he kind of has it all. And he's just 18. He's only been in England a couple of years. So
that's Ida. We have Obafemi, who made a mark at Stamford Bridge, was where I went, oh, okay, okay.
Well, that was a ridiculously good goal as well. He's had 3 starts for Southampton this season. Obafemi, the questions are about the injuries. So he's had these constant hamstring problems, even though he's still a teenager. And then you hear Ralph Hasenhüttl talking about his lack of professionalism, that he really needs to get his head together. He was talking about this pre-Christmas. And you wonder how linked the two are.
Okay.
So he's built like an absolute tank. He came on funnily enough, he made his debut for the senior team, obviously, that night over in Denmark, and it was the brilliant scenes with his mother and Martin O'Neill's last game in charge.
Yeah.
And then he came back down to the 21s, wasn't getting a start. I think, again, Stephen Kenny has so many options, but he comes off the bench in one of the matches. He's like twice the width of everybody else in the pitch.
Yeah.
And like the pace is just ridiculous. So like, he's still young. You presume he's going to get his head together. And even with all that, he's in the squad. Whenever he's fit, he's in the Southampton squad. He mightn't be starting every game. And then the other couple, like Troy Parrott, 17. Like, we're obviously talking him up. It's probably hard to see Troy Parrott getting in the Ireland squad for the Slovakia game.
Yeah, it
now,
is.
because
At
like,
this
there's no
stage it
real
is. Yeah.
way. Played that game against Burnley, but has made his Irish debut at this stage. It's probably unlikely he'll play again between now and then.
Yeah, you have to remember how young he is as well.
This, like, even talking about, he's had an interesting moment in his career, he might need to go on loan. Like, he's too young to go on loan.
Yeah.
He's 17.
Jose Mourinho will be long out of White Hart Lane before he's 20.
So you just sit there,
18, 19.
get to your game time, and like pointed out, I think he's only over there 18 months. Like, get your head around it.
Yeah.
Get used to being a footballer. Play with the 21s for another while. And then Aaron Connolly, the forgotten man at this stage. Just the 2 goals on his first Premier League start against Spurs. Like, he's played 14 times in the Premier League this season now. Like 9 starts already. He was rested at the weekend.
He's got real intelligence. Did you see it? Shearer did a package on him one evening when I think it was the day he scored the goals, and was brilliant. And there was an intelligence about what he was doing that was really promising. This wasn't a kid got lucky kind of thing.
And it seems as though they are going to manage him the right way in Brighton, because obviously you look for his name in the squad. He wasn't even in the 18 at the weekend against Everton, and you wonder, is there an injury? Because there's been a few of them. Like Graham Potter was saying, well, no, we're just trying to manage him. He's 19, he can't play every single game. So it doesn't seem to be form related. You just hope, like, he had the 10 minutes against Georgia, he had the game against Switzerland. Like, is there a spot for him in Slovakia? It's hard to see.
I would like to see him involved, I have to say. Certainly
I'm
on the
struggling
bench.
to see where. I think McLean and McGoldrick will definitely play. So,
But on the bench, it definitely.
well, on the bench, like I think Ida, Connolly, and Obafemi will all. Ida, Connolly, Obafemi, and Malumbi, I would expect, will all be in the senior squad.
We got to wrap here and get to Tim Vickery. That's quite positive. 16 players across Premier League and Championship. Under the age of what?
Under the age, they're all eligible for the under 21s.
Yeah, that's a very healthy situation, I would think. The FAI have done a fine job making it and bringing through this generation. That 02 generation seemed to be the real deal, whether it's by fluke or by design, I don't know yet, but they do seem to be coming through very well. We're taking a short break. Tim Vickery will talk to us about the much maligned Sergio Aguero.
Football Screen Time with John Fardy.
He was the psychopathic Begbie in Train Spotting, the reluctant male stripper in The Full Monty, and the villain in The World Is Not Enough. And now Robert Carlyle is playing the British Prime Minister in the new Sky show Cobra. He'll be my guest on Screen Time this week, as well as comedian Des Bishop, who tells us all about his favourite movie and his own short-lived movie career. And as always, I'll be telling you what to watch on the big and small screen.
Screen Time with John Fardy
Brought to you by Stella Cinemas.
on News Talk.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now on newstalk.com or on the News Talk app.
Paul, good to see you. Some game.
Yeah.
How have you been? Last time we spoke, you were feeling a bit down. You weren't yourself.
Yeah, I was under a lot of pressure in work. It was just weighing on me.
And I was drinking too much as well. That didn't help. Feeling better now, though. Back running again and eased off on the pints.
Great to hear. Listen, if there's anything I can ever do, let me know.
Thanks, Brian.
If you struggle with anxiety, stress or depression, alcohol may make things worse. Find out how alcohol impacts your health at askaboutalcohol.ie from the HSE.
Selling your car? At Zoocar, we buy any car, even if you don't buy ours. It's quick and hassle-free. Fill out your details online and receive a cash offer, valid for 5 days. Visit zoocar.ie today.
The Sport Ireland campus Blanchardstown is the home of Irish sport, not just for our athletes, but for you and the community. For families, check out our kids' camps, sport academies and birthday parties. For adults, why not join our newly refurbished gym with a 50-metre swimming pool, or book one of our world-class indoor or outdoor facilities, including our athletics track, sports pitches and courts. And for companies, check out our team building days, conference facilities and events. All this and more at sportirelandcampus.ie.
Have a great evening with itsforwomen.ie. Don't live your life on hold. Get a quote now at itsforwomen.ie and see why we're trusted by over 130,000 women in Ireland.
Air France.
La France
is in the air. With our new Oh La La deals, you don't just have to imagine. You can be setting off on a safari from Johannesburg, exploring the floating markets in Bangkok, or visiting the ancient temples of Tokyo. Oh La La, c'est magnifique! You can afford to let your imagination fly far, far away. Air France.
La France
is in the air. Book your flights via Paris from Dublin or Cork Airport by Tuesday the 21st of January at airfrance.ie.
Introducing the all-new Renault Capture. Whether you're hitting town or the open road, popping a mountain bike on the back or a buggy in the boot, it's the car for all your lives. And with savings of €3,500 guaranteed with Renault Carbon Rewards, you're rewarded for choosing a cleaner car. Visit your local Renault dealer today. Renault, voted Manufacturer of the Year by Top Gear. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
Wondering if alcohol is affecting your health, weight or wallet? Find out using the drinks calculator at askaboutalcohol.ie from the HSE.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Here is Lovren on the ball now, attacking the Villa box. He finds Aguero just on the edge of it. Aguero with a shot, and it's through the hands of Ireland, and it's into the nets. It's a goal for Sergio Aguero. 27 minutes on the clock, and what a historic goal that is. Aston Villa 0, Manchester City 3. Sergio Aguero has gone level with Thierry Henry on 175 Premier League goals, and what a spectacular goal it was. David Silva plays a through ball to Aguero. Aguero's in the box, shifts the ball to his right foot and puts it into the bottom corner. It's another goal for Sergio Aguero, and it's a goal that makes history. He is now the top scoring non-English player in the Premier League, 176 goals. But the goals here this afternoon are up to 5 for Manchester City. 57 minutes on the clock. Aston Villa 0, Manchester City 5. Gives away the ball away. It's Aguero now in the box. Aguero's a shot with his right foot, and he's completed his hat-trick. What a man, what a player. Sergio Aguero will go down in history as one of the greatest Premier League strikers, and he's bagged yet another hat-trick for his team. It's Aston Villa 0, Manchester City 6.
Stephen Doyle there alongside Stephen Hunt yesterday on Off the Ball, reacting to Sergio Aguero and his 3 goals as Manchester City beat Aston Villa 3-1. And so we have Aguero as the most prolific overseas goal scorer in English football history. He also, by the way, set the record for the number of Premier League hat-tricks. He has overtaken Alan Shearer and gone to 12. So Sergio Aguero has done rather well. Let me cast your minds back to 2011. Tim Vickery, working for the BBC, then as now, said on his arrival, Aguero looks more like being a case of the right player arriving at the right time and for the right reasons. His signing is both a present to the club for having qualified for the Champions League and a declaration of intent to make an impact in the competition. City fans should be thrilled with his signing. Tim Vickery, hello.
That's nice, isn't it? It's nice to have people read things out when you get things right.
So when 23-year-old Aguero pitched up at Manchester City, he arrived with a big reputation. Has he surpassed your greatest, wildest expectations, or is this about what really was a prodigy should have done?
Well, the comparison that has always hovered around Sergio Aguero is with the great Brazilian striker, Romário. He was compared to Romario right at the start there with Independiente as an adolescent by Cesar Luis Minotti, who was his coach and who was Argentina's chain-smoking coach when they won the 1978 World Cup. If you were to compare him with Romario, you might think, well, he hasn't hit the heights in a World Cup as Romario did in 1994. Perhaps not quite as naturally talented as Romario, but more consistent year after year after year. An absolute goal machine. We'd seen enough of it early on, and by the time he came to City, what's that, 2011, you know, he'd been playing professional football for 6 years. And so it was no risk, I think. It really wasn't a risky buy at all. You knew you were getting absolute class. And I still think there's probably some more to come. I know that the big target for City is the Champions League, and Aguero has a pretty good record in the Champions League. And if they are going to make that dream come true in the next few months, he's really going to have to step up to the plate once more. I still think there's some more to come for him.
In many respects, he's underappreciated. Like, there was a piece yesterday in the Sunday Times. It was Jonathan Northcroft, and this was obviously in advance of him scoring the hat-trick at Villa Park. But Northcroft was comparing him, say, for instance, to Henry as the most natural comparison, given it's Henry's record he's just broken. And he was saying, well, Henry's won, you know, Football Writers Association Player of the Year awards. He's been PFA Player of the Year on numerous occasions. Aguero, by comparison, has won virtually no individual accolades and has scraped onto the PFA Team of the Year just twice. This is a player who has scored over 20 goals, league goals a season in 6 out of his 8 years. He's on course to do it again, 26 being his peak in 2014, 24 goals in 2015, and as we've said, is now, number 4 on the all-time list, and he's played fewer games than Henry as well. Even I feel like I underappreciate Aguero.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. In part, he's a victim of his own success, and he's clearly a less flashy kind of player than Thierry Henry. Although his work in the build-up play, I think, is very good, and I think he's still getting better. But one of the things that he suffers from, and I think great centre-forwards sometimes suffer from this, is that they make the damn thing just look too easy. You know, I mean, scoring goals is... now, football is a low-scoring game. Those people who can get goals in the kind of quantities that he can, and when it really matters, I think he scored more against Big Six rivals than anyone else has. You know, he's come up big when it's mattered for Man City as well. The people who do that are absolutely invaluable. There are very, very few of them in the world game. And why is he underappreciated then? Well, that's one explanation, that he makes the whole thing just look too easy. Another maybe is his lack of success at senior level for Argentina. Now, he's won the World Under-20 Cup twice, being voted as the best player. And the second time, he's won the Olympics. He scored plenty of goals for Argentina. In fact, only 2 men, Messi and Batistuta, have scored more. But the big senior tournaments haven't often seen him at his best. Not always his fault. I think he was harshly done by in the chaos of the 2018 World Cup campaign there with Argentina, where he was probably the only player who came out with his reputation enhanced. But maybe had he really fired in a World Cup, maybe he would be more appreciated.
Yeah, you're right what you say, by the way, about his record against the big teams. Bar Anfield. Anfield is a weird anomaly in all of this, where he struggled to break his duck. But otherwise, his record against all the big teams is really good. He also has the record for most assists in the Premier League from a striker. He's weighed in with 46 assists. And yet still, even a couple of years ago when Guardiola brought in Jesus, there was a sense that he looked at Aguero and Aguero's work rate and felt, this isn't going to work for me. And here we are 3 years later, and Guardiola still can't quite move past Aguero in a way that you suspect deep down he might want to.
Well, I'm not sure he does want to anymore. I think that was a thought going through his mind a few years back. But I think he's got Aguero working much harder, and they've also got him fitter. Now, I think that perhaps has been a problem through his career. And when he first came across to European football, to Atletico Madrid, they were absolutely horrified by his diet, which was very, very Argentine, meaning that it was practically all fizzy drinks and red meat. And they had to work very, very hard to get him to change his diet. And I think physically, he did find it hard to last the season. And that's one of the reasons I think that his record in senior tournaments for Argentina is a little bit disappointing. And there were campaigns, and the 2014 World Cup really stands out, when he was clearly dragging a weary carcass around the field. He was nowhere near fit enough to give of his best. But that's something where it would seem to me that Guardiola has really made progress just in the last 3 years or so. And got him fitter, got him working harder, got him pressing better. And I'm not surprised by that statistic with a number of assists, because his work in the build-up play can be spectacular. He's very, very strong on the ball. You can give him the ball in tight spaces. That's the thing he does so well, operate in tight spaces. You can give him it in tight spaces and he'll give you back a wall pass. His movement is terrific. He really is an absolute wonderful goal scorer who I think will be really badly missed by the Premier League when he goes.
Still only 31.
I wonder if perhaps, but he's often talked about going back to Argentina. It is so much of a dream of so many Argentine players, more I think than other South Americans, to go back and round off their career with the club where they started. And Messi has spoken about this with Newell's Old Boys. Juan Sebastian Veron did it really at the peak of his powers when he was still a top-class performer in Italy, went back to Estudiantes, and it seems that Aguero wants to do that with Independiente. So it's up to Man City to prepare the succession. The thing with Gabriel Jesus is he really a centre-forward? And Brazil's coach, Chichi, says he far prefers to operate in a wide role, that he did very well against Aston Villa. And in fact, I thought that added an extra dimension to City's play at times, because Aguero could drop off a little bit at times and use his ability in the build-up play, while Gabriel Jesus could drift in on the diagonal and get into that centre-forward space. That looked to me to be another thing that City can use as they set their sights on the Champions League.
The interesting thing about Aguero, 8 years on from joining City and 177-odd goals on as well, is that I still don't feel like I've a great grasp of the kind of personality he is. You know, he doesn't betray much on the field in any way, really. I can't think of any massively controversial incident he was involved in, or where he badly lost his temper or revealed much of himself. Doesn't seem to do many interviews, Tim. Doesn't seem to court any of the attention maybe that his counterparts do. You think of Thierry Henry. We all got to know Thierry Henry at length, very much at Henry's behest. Aguero, totally different character. What do we know of him?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Not very much. And what we know about him is that he's a relentless goal scorer. I love that quote from Guardiola yesterday, saying that he will die scoring goals. And we know something about his musical taste, and his musical taste for the kind of a recent wave of Latino pop, because he got in trouble not so long ago when I think he'd flown to Holland for a gig of a Colombian singer. But he's not a personality who seeks the limelight. He's very different from Thierry Henry, from the dialectic French school of explaining everything. I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's one reason, perhaps, why, an extra reason, that he is underappreciated. That the relationship that we have with Aguero is very much Aguero, the player, the goal machine, and much less Aguero, the human being.
Like, do we know, has he learned English to any great degree?
Well, for public consumption, not very much. Perhaps sometimes you wonder in these circumstances whether that's for convenience sake. When a microphone isn't present, he's quite capable of carrying out a discourse in English with his teammates. But as far as we know in public, he doesn't speak very much. I suspect that's the way that he likes it.
He grew up in a shantytown south of Buenos Aires, incredibly poor background, street football, was trying to make money on the streets playing football from a very early age. I wasn't exaggerating when I say he's a prodigy. I mean, really, from a very young age, he was fending off serious offers. His family did turn down a big offer from Italy, I think.
Yeah, when he's I think the youngest player ever to play in Argentina's first division at the age of 15. I remember at the time, and I remember seeing that and thinking, well, this must be a case of a precociously physically developed youngster. Someone at 15 who's a strapping 6'2" already. And when I saw him for the first time, it was clear that he wasn't like that at all. Stocky, but small. And the thing that impressed me, the very first time I saw him, which was at the start of 2005, was that he could play back to goal as well. He was a very, very quick striker. Who, and the Minotti's comparison with Romario was instantly available there because the strength in the thighs, the rapid acceleration, the capability of doing things in restricted spaces. But what blew me away right from the start was that he could play back to goal. He could knit the play back to goal. Yeah. So right from the start, you're thinking, well, this really is an extraordinary talent. And come the middle of the year, 2005, he was in the Argentina side that won the Under-20 World Cup in Holland. And that's where he struck up a great friendship with Lionel Messi. The pair of them roomed together. And, you know, I've always thought it's a shame that we haven't seen the pair of them at club level, operating at club level, because they have a rapport. We haven't seen it enough for Argentina. I think it's been a failing from Argentina, one of Argentina's many failings in recent years, to get enough from that Messi Aguero partnership, because they're on the same wavelength on and off the field. Indeed, last year, it was thought that Aguero's international career might be over for the reason that nothing really to do with Aguero, more to do with Messi, that Messi would only speak to Aguero and he wouldn't really speak to anyone else. There's been a new Messi since then, a much more collective Messi, a much more outgoing Messi, and Aguero is still part of Argentina's plans, although I think long-term, the centre-forward there is going to be Lautaro Martinez of Inter Milan, who Barcelona are linked with. And perhaps it's a shame that we've never seen Messi and Aguero together at Barcelona. I've often expected Barcelona to move for him in the past because I would love to see that friendship on the field on a week-by-week basis at club level, because I think there would be a real treat for fans.
Yeah, I mentioned there in the midst of our chat that he's still only 31. I had it in my head he was slightly older, I must say. Maybe it's because he's been around for such a long time. But it doesn't look like an especially young 31-year-old, I would say, even though there's no signs of any obvious demise just yet.
No, but you take a battering, don't you, in the being a striker in the Premier League. And remember how the effect that had on Fernando Torres, for example, another former Atletico Madrid striker, who felt that after a few years in the Premier League, he was never quite the same thing again. And you're going up against defenders, some of the biggest, strongest defenders in the world. And some of those people are kind of wardrobes on wheels. Aguero, he's only half as high as them. You know, he's going to take a physical battering. So I wonder if that's one element in his thinking about how long he wants to carry on in the Premier League, and whether he'd like to go back to Argentina, or even maybe. I mean, look at the Barcelona's situation with Luis Suarez. You know, I mean, is there any scope? I doubt it, but is there any scope for a late move there for Barcelona to kind of reunite Messi and Aguero? That's probably more likely than Messi going to Manchester City.
It's hard to know even with Aguero now. You see reports that seem to suggest he's on his own a lot in Manchester now. His family are back home. I don't know. Again, I mean, he seems to be incredibly private. I don't know if you can shed any light on that.
No, not really. I mean, I'm told from people in Man City that he is quite family orientated, and I'm not sure even some of them know him particularly well.
Right.
But the main thing they want to know about him is the number of times that he puts the ball in the back of the net. And as long as he's doing that, they're happy. And I think he's happy as well, because I thought it was fantastic. That scene, what's the score at half-time? Is it 4-0? It's 4-0 at half-time. They've just scored the fourth. And as they're going off the pitch at half-time, Aguero was having a go at Mahrez for not giving him a pass a couple of minutes earlier. You know, the single-minded dedication to scoring goals is the hallmark of Sergio Aguero. It's the thing that makes him such a great player.
He does seem to really have that. Maybe it's gone under the radar ever so slightly as opposed to a Roy Keane type. But when Villa scored their penalty yesterday, it was on Match of the Day too last night. Aguero reacted.
Head in his hands.
He either had a bet on a clean sheet or it's his fantasy football. I mean, it was reacting like a last-minute equaliser had gone in. It was the most bizarre reaction you could imagine at 6-0 up.
Yeah, and what I loved about it is it had nothing to do with him scoring goals, and nothing to do with the number of goals that Man City score. That showed a man who's fully committed to what happens with his team. I'm glad you picked up on that, because I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Again, you know, the one going off at half time with Mahrez. Yes, that's the single-minded selfishness that the centre forward must have. The reaction when Ederson narrowly fails to save the penalty is someone who's totally committed to the fate of his team and his teammates.
So to round this off, I guess it might be interesting to get to put Aguero into Premier League context. I mean, he's at 177 goals and he's 31 years of age. It's interesting you remark he may go back to Independiente. We don't know his plans. So he's at 177. He's not catching Alan Shearer. It doesn't seem like anyone ever will, to be honest, at 260 goals. Wayne Rooney is 208. Andy Cole is 187. And Aguero is 177. And again, just to really put into context what Aguero has done here, Andy Cole is 10 goals ahead of Aguero, but he's played 414 games to Aguero's 255. That was just remarkable. So he's going to catch Andrew Cole this season, or if he stays next season, very, very shortly. And he'll do it in, well over 100 games less. And Andrew Cole wasn't a bad striker, not playing in a bad team either. And then we have Henry on 175 goals and Robbie Fowler on 163. So it's Shearer, Rooney, Andrew Cole, as he is now, Aguero, Henry and Fowler. Again, to finish as we started, I am underappreciating Sergio Aguero here. I have Shearer ahead of him. I have Rooney ahead of him. I still have Henry ahead of him. And I have him maybe neck and neck with Robbie Fowler. Robbie Fowler didn't maybe do it over quite long enough a period. So I am still underappreciating the fox in the box, because he doesn't do fancy touches and beat 3 or 4 players often enough for me.
Yeah, and the only people who scored more goals for him than Argentina. You think of all the great players who played for Argentina. The only players that he's behind are Messi and Batistuta. Right. Now, he's not going to catch Messi. He may catch Batistuta, although I think it's unlikely. But he's leaving plenty of world-class talent behind him. So when he does hang up those boots, those boots have been responsible for plenty of goals at high-level, big games. I'm sure the one that he'll really want now is Champions League. He's got plenty of Premier League winners' medals. I'm sure that what will be concentrating him is the number of goals that he scored in the Champions League. He's got a good record in the competition. He was scoring goals for City in the Champions League, even before they were really competitive in the competition. Well, now they have to be more than competitive. The pressure is really on them to go and win it, which means the pressure is on Aguero to go and break the back of the net again.
Stranger things have happened this year. They're back playing well, so we'll see. Maybe they buy a centre-half in January, maybe they don't. Listen, Tim, thanks so much for coming on and talking Sergio Aguero to us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.